Hey y'all, welcome to this week's episode of Love Dripping from the Walls. You have your host here, Elizabeth Cunningham. It is me, Elizabeth Cunningham. And it is just me today hanging out, holding down the fort. First of all, I just want to say I apologize for not having an episode last week. We had Shaun, my amazing sound guy, Shaun, had a death in his family. And so he went to go and they live in another state, and so he went to be with his family, and that's what he needed to do. And so I did not put out an episode last week. I was doing some editing on my own and it didn't get done, and yada yada yada. Here we are today. And I also, if you want to send a message or give a little love note to Shaun and tell him that you're thinking about him and his family, and send whatever good vibes, prayers, whatever it is that you however it is that you feel about that, also let us know. And he sends his love to all of you. Secondly, I also want to give a shout out to people listening in Australia. Y'all, Love Dripping from the Walls is international. Shout out to all my peeps in Australia listening down under. Down under and on the other side of the world. Oh my gosh, my heart goes out to you. Thank you so much for listening. I am just so thrilled and overjoyed that y'all are listening out there. Keep listening, keep loving. Love you. Okay. And today's topic. Oh, the other thing is too, that I am, since Shaun, my wonderful, amazing sound person, is still with his family, I'm recording from my computer. And so it may sound a little bit different today. So there's that. Oh man, actually, before we get into today's topic, a little bit about what's going on in my life. I am moving. I am moving. I have lived in the same place for 4 years. 4 years, which to some people might not sound like a very long time, but I haven't. The only other place that I've lived longer than that was when I lived in the house that I went to middle school and high school when I lived in Kansas. The house that I lived in when I was in middle school and high school. That's the other place in my life that I have lived longer than 4 years. So since I moved out when I was 18, this is the longest that I've ever lived in one house, one apartment. 4 years. So I'm getting rid of a ton of stuff. Oh my gosh, I have so many random things. I have these champagne glasses that say 2007 on them. What am I going to do with those? Like, I have no idea. Like, I'm finding cords. I'm finding cords to things that I have no why. Like, what are they? I don't know. I don't even understand. Like, I don't even know why I kept them. Why do I have these cords? At what point, why did I put them there? You know, questioning my sanity as I am uncovering all of the things that are still hanging out and around in my place. And the cats are very unhappy and unsatisfied with with this move and transition. Oh my goodness. But I'm moving into this great place. I'm going to be a live-in babysitter, housekeeper temporarily until March. And then March, Brandy and I are moving in together. What? What? Yep, that is happening. Brandy and I are moving in together in March, and we haven't found a place yet. And we're just kind of getting things together and sorted out. So Wow. There's that. So I'm really, really excited about that. Oh, and also it was my mama's birthday this past Saturday. Shout out to my mom. I love you so much. So, so, so much. Thank you, Mom, for giving me life. Thank you for teaching me amazing lessons along the way. One of the greatest things that my mom has ever said to me. So I had back surgery when I was 16. Um, and I had back surgery. I had scoliosis when I was younger, and then my scoliosis got really bad. And so I had spinal fusion surgery. So another fun fact about Elizabeth, I have metal bars in my spine, metal bars and screws and hooks. And if you follow me on my personal Instagram account is Els Cunningham, ELZ Cunningham. And I actually have a couple posts about my spinal fusion, and you can see the x rays of all of the metal that's in my spine. So that's pretty crazy. But I remember I had that surgery when I was 16, and I was recovering from the surgery. And, having metal put in your spine is really painful, not a comfortable experience. And my mom stayed with me the entire time. She slept on this little, I mean, couch is a very generous term. It was more like a padded windowsill, if I remember correctly. But my mom slept there while I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital for about a week, and my mom just, never left my side. She was there with me the whole time. She's an incredible person. I'm going to turn my sound off on my computer. There we go. So you can't hear all of my notifications. There you go. And at that point in time, I don't remember what happened exactly or what conversation we were having or anything like that. But my mom just said, pain is only temporary. And that's been something through anything in my life, any physical pain, any heartache pain, any frustration, any anxiety, whatever it is. I just think that when she said that, pain is only temporary. This isn't forever. What you're dealing with, what you're going through, it's not forever. It's going to be okay. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that my mom has ever given me, is that everything's going to be okay. And so I love you, Mom. You're amazing. You're wonderful. You're beautiful. Everyone who knows you knows it. And now everyone who listens to this podcast knows it too. All right, there's all of my precursors to today's episode. And so today I wanted to talk about, it's a really interesting topic. And I'm actually really interested to hear what people have to say about this topic too. It's something that I think that is going to, keep presenting itself as a theme throughout our episodes as I get more guests on. And it's a topic of, if you're not practicing polyamory, are you polyamorous? Or if you're not practicing non-monogamy, are you non-monogamous? And I think the non-monogamous one is a little, I'll get to that in a second. I'm just going to stick with polyamory for the time being. So for me, polyamory is just who I am. That's who I am. That's how I operate. It's almost like asking me, if you're not pansexual, or if you're not practicing being pansexual, which I don't even know that. See, if you switch it around, it starts to not make sense, which is how you kind of know that it's an absurd question. It's like, if you're not pansexual, or if you're not practicing being pansexual, are you still pansexual? Or another way to put it is if you're not practicing being queer, are you still queer? If you're not practicing being gay, are you still gay? If you're not practicing being monogamous, are you still monogamous? Oh, that's a good one. That's a good flip on its side, if you're not practicing being it's like if you ask that to someone, you're like, someone says, "Oh, well, I'm monogamous." Like, okay, well, are you dating right now? Like, well, no, I'm single. Well, how do you know? How do you know you're monogamous? How do you know you're monogamous if you're not practicing being monogamous? Like that's how I hear that question whenever that question gets asked. Like it's so silly. It's like, no, it doesn't matter if you're dating right now. That's just who you are. That's how you operate. That's how your relationships go. So that is yeah, so for me, polyamory is just who I am. That's how my relationships go. That's what fills me up. That's what lights me up. That's what works for me in my life. And even right now, I would say, I'm dating Brandy and then I have two other partners and well, one partner doesn't live in Seattle, and one partner, we're still kind of figuring out, who we are for each other, what our relationship looks like. Like, we know that we're more than friends, but we don't really know what that more than friends looks like. And I still I said yes to a date, actually, the other week, and it wasn't my cup of tea. Not gonna have a second date with that person. Maybe I'll go into that later. Probably not. But you just go on a date with someone and you're like, "Ah, thanks for you're sweet, you're great, thanks for playing, but no thanks. Next, moving on next." And anyway, so and the reason that it's interesting to me because when you think about, okay, so if polyamory is just who I am, if monogamous is just who you are, if, all of that, then there isn't really a reason why. Like, oh, the reason why I'm polyamorous is because it just works better for me. It's like, no, the reason why I'm polyamorous is because I am polyamorous. Kind of what's that ancient, now I'm gonna forget. Is it a Buddhist thing? I feel like I've said this on an episode before. What's the sound of one hand clapping is the sound of one hand clapping. It's like the test for enlightenment or something like that. I don't know. Y'all have Google, look it up. The sound of one hand clapping is the sound of one hand clapping. It's like I'm polyamorous because I'm polyamorous. And even when I am not quote unquote practicing polyamory, it's still who I am. And I would assert that most people who say that they're polyamorous feel the same way. And so, and I want to get into the ethical non-monogamy bit of it too, because I do think that some people who are in the broader category of ethically non-monogamous may ultimately be monogamous. Like it may just be something that they're just dipping their toe into. Maybe they decided as their own individual person, maybe they decided, as them and their partner decided to, oh, what if we had a third person in the relationship? Or what if we slept with other people and not just with each other? What if? Like what would happen? What if we go to play parties? What if we do this? What if da 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 da? Like as a way to explore your own sexuality. So there's just a way of, figuring it out, like trying things on. Don't knock it till you try it. Although I wouldn't say don't knock it till you try it. I think that there are in my experience, there are some things where it's like, if it's not a curiosity for you, then don't do it. That's just my own, that's not a rule for life, but that is my own personal rule. Like if I'm not curious about something, I just don't do it. Like if I'm curious, it doesn't matter if how much knowledge I have necessarily about a topic, but if I'm curious about something, I'll say yes to it because I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm really curious about that. But if it's something where I have a general knowledge of it and I'm just not curious about it, like I was talking with a friend, we're just gonna go straight there. I was talking with a group of friends the other day and we were just like talking about butt stuff and like playing and all of that. And I'm just like, dude, I'm like super not into like anal. I'm like super not into butt stuff. I'm super not into like anal stuff. I'm just like, I don't know, like it's not a thing that like it's not even a thing that I'm curious about, like, I'm not like, what da, 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 da," and I'm not, like, turned off by it either. Because it's like, if I have partners that are like, "Oh, I'm super into that," I'll do that. I'll be like, "Okay, what do you want? Like, let's have fun, let's play. If that feels good for you, like, I'm down to give, for sure, absolutely." But for myself, I'm like, "No, no thanks, that's fine. I'm cool." And I think that that's totally okay, but it's the willingness to consider something, right? Like the willingness to be like, because I've considered it in the past. We played around with it. It's a thing, and then I'm like, no, it's not for me. And it's like, okay, cool. So that's that's my analogy. Oh my god, that's my analogy. I should not be left to my own devices and just like talk on this thing by myself. Oh man, I need adult supervision. Okay, so I yeah, so that's my that's my analogy to ethical non-monogamy. It's like, if you're not into it, you're not into it. But you could be. So why don't you try it out? So in the realm of trying things out and opening up your relationship. So we've already established that if you're polyamorous and, there's whatever you need to work out inside of that. But I think that the other question that brings up too is what if you are trying things out and I mean trying things out as far as like relationships go, like having a third person in your relationship or opening it up to see other people or things like that, where then the question becomes, how do you do that? And one of the resources that I have for that topic specifically is The Ethical Slut. It's a book. It's called The Ethical Slut. I will put it in the show notes for today. So if you want to look up The Ethical Slut, and I've talked about it in episodes previous to this, but whenever because I think one of the places where the question comes from, the question of if you're not practicing polyamory, are you polyamorous? So the answer is yes. But I think that where that question could come from is just this question of like how? Like how do you do that? Because there's so much misinformation about polyamory because it's so new, because people don't do it, because people don't talk about it, because it's super new, because it's, taboo, because, whatever. And so I think a lot of these questions just come from a not knowing of what it is or what you could do or, or even of yourself. Like when that question gets asked of people and the person that is being asked questions themselves because you just don't know. You haven't explored that part of who you are necessarily. And so, anyway, so back to The Ethical Slut. So, The Ethical Slut has a chapter about opening up relationships and opening up what's possible inside of your relationships. And it comes back to being willing. And, your partner may not be willing to try things on that they're not comfortable with because it's not they're just a no. They're like they're like me with butt stuff. It's just like, "No, that's not for me. It's totally fine." I love how I've now created this analogy. Oh my god. Oh man. But yeah, it's just there has to be a willingness to try it on, to explore, to ask questions, to the willingness to fuck it all up. Because look, I think that one of the reasons why so many questions get asked is because people wanna know, and because people just don't wanna fuck shit up. And that's totally fine because then you have to deal with people being upset with you, then you have to deal with possibly, like having a relationship end or this fear of not being loved, a fear of not having people like you, a fear of not being accepted. Like it's all totally normal human stuff. That's why we ask so many questions. But I I'm saying that if you're not going out and actually taking the action, if you're not having those conversations with your partner, like if you're just asking questions, if you're in the camp of, I want to open up my relationship, but I haven't talked to my partner about it, and I want to figure out all of this information first so I can bring it to them, it's not a bad thing to do that, and I think that you should have a general knowledge of something to bring to your partner so you're not just like, "Oh, I was thinking about this the other day," and then just, like, completely rock their world and then not have anything to say about it. That might not be the best way to go about it, but if you're gathering evidence and you're building arguments for things for, months before you bring something to your partner, that's not gonna go over well either because then what is your relationship with your partner that you are now having to build a case for something that you want. So the first step really is just to get that you might upset people. You might upset your partner. You might upset your family. You might upset your friends. And this is not just with polyamory or opening up your relationships. This is just life. You just might upset people. And that's okay. Like it really is. Like it really is okay to upset people sometimes when you're asking questions. Sometimes people are just going to be upset and there's nothing that you can do about that. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that it's okay to purposefully upset people. I'm not saying that. I am saying that if you are finding out something that's true about yourself and then sharing it with people, and then because you're sharing something that's true about yourself, then people get upset, that's okay. It's okay for them to be upset. It doesn't mean anything about you. It's so interesting because, we don't want people to get upset. We share something like, hey, I really want to open up this relationship. And then your partner gets upset about that. And then we take it personally. And that seems like, a generally proper course of action. But take the case that their upsetness has nothing to do with you. It has to do with whatever came up for them in you saying you want to open up the relationship or you want to possibly see other people or you're having these feelings or however it is that you approached that topic, that whatever came up for them is them. It's their insecurities, it's their fears, it's their doubts, it's their worries, It's the upsetness of they thought that they had a partner that was just wanting to be with them, and now they have a partner who possibly doesn't just want to be with them. Of course, they're gonna be upset about that. I think it would be weird for them to not be upset about that. And it's okay for them to be upset, and it's okay for you to just let them be upset. What isn't going to work is they get upset and then you get upset with them for being upset. No, it's really okay. You can give them the space. You can be that type of partner to give someone the space that they need to process the things that you say. Really. You can really do that. And it might not be easy. It might even not be what you want to do. Most of the time, when people get upset with something that you say, then you immediately take it personally. Well, how could you get upset when I'm just trying to speak my truth and I'm just trying to da 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 da? But then it's just two upset people trying to convince one another of something. Instead of going to your partner, hey, I've been having these feelings. I think that I'd like to approach the idea of opening up our relationship because I really have these feelings of love or lust or whatever towards all of these people. And, I want to know what that could look like. How do you feel about that? And then they say something like, fuck you. They could say something like, "Okay, let's talk about that." That's a reaction that they could have. But let's say that they go straight to like, "Fuck you. You don't love me. Like you never wanted to be with me. You're da 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 da." Da." It's like, "Okay." And you might have to breathe. 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 And then be like, "Okay, that's not what I said. I got that what you heard was that I don't love you and that I don't want this relationship or I'm just trying to find a way out or, whatever. And that's not true. That's not what I want. Here's what I want. And then they'll either hear you or they won't. And it may be more than one conversation that has to be had. And I'm just saying that it's okay to let people be upset. And even greater than that, you can really get why they're upset. And I'm not condoning what people do. I'm not saying that if your partner tells you to fuck off, that that's okay for them to say. I'm not condoning people yelling at each other. I'm not condoning that. I'm just saying I live in the real world. People get upset and people are human and they're allowed to be upset. Now, again, going back to my previous episodes of having unhealthy, toxic, or abusive relationships, if that upsetness crosses over into that, it's a completely different story entirely. There's a difference between someone being upset because they're human and humans get triggered, and someone being upset and using it to manipulate or intimidate or control you. That is completely different. And I'm actually not going to go there today. So if you have any questions about the line between just human beings being upset and toxic, unhealthy, or abusive relationships, please message me. Message me, send me a comment. On Anchor app, you can send video, or not video messages, audio messages. I'll listen to your audio messages. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. So, where are we? Asking your partner to open your relationship, giving them space to be upset. Okay, got it. Got that you're upset. Maybe it takes a couple of conversations. Maybe it takes a couple months. Maybe it takes a couple years to have those conversations. It just depends on your relationship, it depends on the person. But coming back to why people ask questions, and I think that so I'm learning that on the Anchor website, you can only record for 30 minutes. So fun facts about Anchor, and now we know. And just continuing to what I was saying was why people ask questions. So yeah, it's really great that people ask questions like, if you're not practicing polyamory, then are you polyamorous? I think that's really great that people ask questions like that. And then we can have these type of discussions. And I think one of the themes that's been coming up in these episodes is why people ask questions. And I think that that's really important. And I would love to, I actually don't have necessarily an answer for why people would ask that question. I was assuming that one reason why people ask that question is because they are curious if they themselves are polyamorous to see, and that's why I went on, how to open up your relationship, is, if I'm not practicing polyamory, if I'm not like being with multiple people at the same time, like, does that mean I'm polyamorous, or what is, just kind of trying to navigate your feelings around it. So I started on a personal level, but I think that one other reason why people could ask the question, if you're not practicing polyamory, are you polyamorous, could be from a partner seeking standpoint as well. So I really like to be clear on why people are asking the questions that they're asking, because I also don't think that people are always asking the questions that they want to have answered. I don't think that question necessarily, I mean, it might, like, sometimes when people ask that question might be the question that you want to have answered, but I think that underneath that could be other questions that you're actually wanting to have answered. And so I think it's important to understand why people are asking questions so that you can really answer the question that you want to have answered. And that is definitely a theme that has come up in the past. And I think that for yourself, it's really good to ask the questions that you want to have answered, just for your own clarification and for your own self, and just to be like direct, like have your speaking be direct, and to practice have your speaking be direct, because that's not only going to help you in romantic relationships, but that's going to help you everywhere in life. And the other reason why it's really important is because people are people are very easily offended by questions. And what that comes down to is also something that I spoke to earlier, is that when you say something, it's hardly ever exactly what you said that upsets people. It's whatever response got triggered. So when you don't ask the question that you want to have answered, you might not get the response that you want. So you could also consider that if you're not getting the response that you want, that you may not be asking the right question. So that's just a pondering that I'll leave you with. And I love you all so much. And I'm so overjoyed that you all are listening to this podcast. Please send me your comments, feedback, questions, your thoughts. I would love to hear them. I would love to share them. And if you are listening right now on any platform, please use that platform to comment on. Please use the Anchor app to comment on. Anchor app has now been bought out by Spotify. And so starting on November 25th, Anchor app might look different. So for those of you who are listening on Anchor or listening on the Anchor app, just know that it may be a little bit different. I don't know if it's going to change very much. I just got an email that's like, just to let you know, Anchor's been bought out by Spotify. So fun facts. Anyway, thank you for listening to Love Dripping from the Walls. You can follow on Instagram or Facebook at Love Dripping from the Walls. Leave comments and questions, and I may share your thoughts on the podcast. Please rate and review on whatever platform you're listening on. If you want to support Love Dripping from the Walls and yours truly on the Anchor app, go onto the Anchor app and subscribe or give monthly donations. Keep listening and keep loving.